Yo iba solo.
Ya, voy a apagar los micrófonos. No hable. Estamos en YouTube.
No,
Todavía no, profe.
Magister.
Llegó. ¿Que no tiene Telegram, por favor?
Hello. Morning, morning. Hello. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Mr. Mike. Big Boss.
Hey, Sara. Bueno, voy a las 9:30 tengo que coger a Capechicho. Antes a las 10. Así que si no estoy, pues tú sigue adelante. Pero yo venía preparado
Para el welcome. Puede ser welcome.
Y ahí llegaron los.
¿El profe andar bien, bien?
Pero. Si no, pues. Yo de ahí lo dejo. Yo voy a estar aquí. Para la verga no te
Microphones on.
Profe.
Microphones on.
Profe. Profe. La familia. Profe, necesito que me dé tu firma.
Claro, tocando los conferencistas. Se lo mandaste, lo mandaste, lo mandaste.
Profe.
Gonzalo. Nada. Mandaste al grupo, lo mandaste, ¿no? ¿Cuál es el motivo? Ahí quedó, ¿ves?
No, espérame. ¿Sienta eso?
Vamos.
Eso no. Operemos aquí porque
I think that we can start this year. Para relajes.
dígale al profe Miguel que se lo firma.
Deme cadena.
¿Esta?
Ese
Llévale.
es negro.
Ajá, el negro. Yo tengo así. ¿Tienen azuela ya?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Esto aquí, lo pongo aquí. Esto aquí, ¿no? Ahí.
Morning to all the professors, please be in the first row. Good morning, respected and distinguished audience. As usual, the English School during this English week offers teachers and students a well-recognized conference session. Today, we have a discussion panel with distinguished panelists recognized for their work in their personal experience using the English language. To start, we are honored to present the moderators of this event. Graduated from Latina University as a lawyer, she is community mediator certified by the American Bar Association and from the Procuraduría General de la Administración. Works and Risk Associated, junior student at National University in the English BA. Let's welcome Sara Isabel Ruiz. Professor al Centro Regional Universitario de Veraguas, Master in Applied Linguistics, Master in English as a Second Language, and Master in Virtual Learning Environments. Lecturer in national and international conferences. Let's welcome Gonzalo Cabrera.
Good morning, respected Dr. Jaime Rivera, Coordinator of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Magister Miguel de León, Coordinator of the English School in Centro Regional Universitario de Veraguas, Professor and student from the English Centro Regional Universitario de Veraguas. Audience who attend through the digital network, distinguished panelists.
Today, we have the pleasure to have the coordinator of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Magister Dr. Jaime Rivera. Please welcome to this event.
Muy buenos días, Magíster Miguel de León, coordinador, director de la Escuela de Inglés de nuestro Centro Regional Universitario de Veraguas, profesores de la Escuela de Inglés, conferencistas, presentes, invitados, jóvenes estudiantes. Agradezco infinitamente la puerta, la ventana que me abre la Escuela de Inglés para dirigir unas palabras de apertura en este ciclo de conferencias de las investigaciones en inglés dentro de la celebración de la Semana del Inglés. Y realmente estoy convencido que en esta nueva universidad, para la construcción del conocimiento científico, para llevar a puerto seguro los resultados de nuestras investigaciones, el manejo del idioma inglés es fundamental. Está en la responsabilidad de estos estudiantes que hoy con debida atención van a escuchar los aportes de los diferentes conferencistas y quedará en ustedes el potenciar ese conocimiento del inglés para que las investigaciones que se realicen en este escenario o en este ámbito sean exitosas. Ustedes son el relevo generacional de todos sus profesores. Tienen un compromiso. Tienen que llevar, deben de llevar, es la esperanza, deben de llevar su conocimiento al éxito. Y estamos convencidos que con el manejo del inglés como segunda lengua, ustedes serán uno de nuestros mejores investigadores de la Universidad de Panamá. Confiamos en eso. Siendo así, quiero agradecerle nuevamente a la dirección de la Escuela de Inglés la oportunidad que me brindan y de mi parte como coordinador de la Facultad de Humanidades, con todo cariño, les declaro realmente inaugurado entonces este ciclo de conferencia. Muchas gracias.
Miguel de León words.
Professor Magister Miguel.
Good morning, Dr. Rivera, Dr. Ivy Sanchez, and professors of the English school, students, especially students that join us here today to celebrate the English week, which is our week. We celebrate the importance of our school, the role of our school in our country. We produce the best students and the best teachers in the country. So we are very proud, and you have to feel very proud of yourselves. And this is something that that has been shared through all of the schools. We also have the best staff, professors. So thank you. And today we start with the conference day. So a day that has been prepared by the committee, the staff of this committee. They have been they have worked very hard to have special guests like Dr. Sanchez, international speaker, lecturer. We also have Dr. Loaiza, Magister Eva Ramos, Arlene Sandoval, Magister Arlene Sandoval, and Magister Delgado. Most of them, they started in this Centro Regional as well, and they are still part of our family. So thank you. Thank you. I hope that we all share the knowledge of the speakers. And with no further ado, so let's start celebrating the conference day of the English School, conference day of 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Miguel. In 2022, we began a new reality in the world after living through an unexpected experience that was COVID-19 pandemic. We have realized the importance of managing a second language, not only in school strata, but with the means of communication that we use in different scenarios. And that is why today we ask ourselves, ESL teaching, where is it heading? To answer this question, we have different experience and professional panelists.
Dr. Ivy Sanchez Serrano. Ivy Sanchez Serrano is leading Panamanian expert in global health, pharmaceutical innovation, translational science policy, and precisional medicine. Ivy Sanchez Serrano is the author of 2 books. The first, The Global Crisis in Health Systems, from the Research Laboratory to the Patient's Bedside. The LSAT 2011 and 2040. And the most recent, The Core, a Collaborative Paradigm for the Pharmaceutical Industry and Global Healthcare. He is author and co-author of several articles in prestigious scientific journals and has been a contributing author on 2 books in the field of pharmaceutical discovery and development agenda specific medicine. Ibis is currently working with the prestigious Elsevier Publishing House on his new book on the global crisis in health system, taking into account the geopolitical, climatical, and migratory changes that affects the world today. The research of the scientist Ibis Sanchez Serrano on the global crisis of health system is the first exhaustive analysis of current global situation of health care and the role of pharmaceutical industry within it. This work has been prized as excellent by Choosing Magazine and nominated from the prestigious Prince of Austria Award. He was This work has been praised as excellent by the Choice Magazine and nominated from the prestigious Prince of Austria Award. He was the recipient of Fulbright Award, and he has been the subject of significant cover around the world. The core model and economic theory discovered by Ibis is of a pragmatic organizational nature to optimize the drug discovery and development process within important repercussion for global health system.
Sanchez Serrano has been interviewed extensively by international media, including C-SPAN, CNN, Univision, ANC, FEF, Associated Press, Dutch Press, Inter, El Tiempo, and Teleantioquia, Colombia, El Journal, Costa Rica, and the main media outlet in his native Panama country, among others. During COVID-19 pandemic, Ibit has been from the beginning one of the leading expert voices in public health and global healthcare in Panama. He is constantly interviewed by the country's leading and most prestigious television, radio, and newspaper outlets on health and scientific issues, as well as important socioeconomic and cultural issues. Lecturer, international lecturer, Ibis has been invited to different conferences like New York Public Library, which have been transmitted to all the countries, to the World Forum in the United States, research investigation on Novartis in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and medicine in a specific and other international event of pharmaceutical affairs, as well as by University of Americas in Puebla and the Institute of Health of Mexico. In September 2022, Ibis was invited by the National College of Pharmaceutical Chemists in Colombia, Bogota, to give the keynote speech on alternatives in pharmaceutical innovation to face the global crisis in health system. He was also interviewed by El Tiempo TV and the Dr. CD program. Ibi Sanchez Serrano is genetist by training, and he has conducted studies and research in the scientific and commercial fields of contemporary science in Iowa State University, Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory, Boston University, Tufts University, Harvard, and the Technological Institute of Massachusetts. Among others, even is based in Boston, where he is creating a startup biopharmaceutical company specializing in neurogenetics and oncology, and in Santiago de Veraguas, Panama, where he is engaged in humanitarian, philanthropic, and educational activities. During COVID-19 pandemic, together with his team, Ivis led the raising of approximately at $140,000 hospital center in order to increase its diagnostic capacity of COVID-19. It was also made possible to purchase the sophisticated neurosurgical equipment for said hospital by Panamanian state. With the support of the mayor's office of Santiago de Veraguas, it was designed, created, and recreated doctors for the novel pediatric care program, a program for free care for low-income children in Santiago de Veraguas by leading doctors, doctors and Panamanians in the areas of pediatric cardiology and neurology. In addition, in the midst of the pandemic and with the support of the Santiago Veraguas earthquake, IBIS provided a series of 4 virtual expert lectures on SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 variants of SARS-CoV-2 and anti-COVID-19 vaccine. He also gave many other lectures and participated in educational activities for the general population and academic free of charge. Ivis Serrano Sanchez is a member of scientific editorial board of the journal Gender and Genome of the Gender Specific Medicine Foundation of New York, and has received important national and international recognition. His passions are books, classical music, fine arts, nature, photograph, and animals.
Dr. Ives, can you come here?
Good morning. Thank you very much, everybody. For me, it's a great honor to be here and to be able to share some experiences with this new generation, which I see is very enthusiastic and very young. So thank you very much for the invitation, Professor Nadila, Professor Gonzalo, and for the enthusiastic introduction. This is actually a very funny experience for me because, first of all, yes, I am an author, I am a writer, and I love the letters and I love the English language. But this is a subject which is outside my expertise. The subject is basically the teaching and the learning of English as a lingua franca. So therefore, I am talking now about a subject which is very, very far away from my area, but at the same time, it is something that is really, really interesting because, first of all, it is about the use of English as a tool of communication, as a vehicle of communication. So this is basically what we are doing right now. So about the subject of a lingua franca, many of you probably know what lingua franca is. If someone knows what it is, please raise the hands. Okay, we have one student there. The teachers knows already. Okay, so let us do a little bit of an exercise in history of a lingua franca. Lingua franca is basically a Latin term that was used in the Middle Ages, and what it means is basically a Frankish language, and that was basically the language, Frankish, that was spoken during the period of Charlemagne, the emperor. And so it was basically an international language. Later, that language was replaced by Latin. Latin was another language that became basically the international language that was used not only in politics, but also in the letters and as a means of communication among people from different ethnic and national backgrounds. Later, French became such language, and now we have English as that lingua franca, as that language that is used international for communication and also as a vehicle of understanding between nations. So, the importance of that language, or the teaching of that language for us, is crucial because right now we live in a world that is globalized and needs that people communicate and express their ideas and also exchange feelings and cultural values and knowledge, etc. And there is a huge difference between what it is the English as a lingua franca, as a common usage language, and English as a second language. So in my experience, when I was in Panama as a student, I studied here in Manuel H. de Perez in the primary education, then Jose Santos Puga, and then later at the San Vicente de Paul High School. So the English that we learned was very, 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 very basic English. So then when I went to the university, I started the university here at the Panama Medical School. And then we also learned English. The language that we used was a language in English that was just very basic for communicating ideas, but that wasn't really deep enough and comprehensive enough so that to get a full understanding of the language as an expert, okay? So then I won a scholarship by the United States Agency for International Development, a Fulbright scholarship. And then we studied English as a second language. And there one could see the difference, because when you study English as a second language, not only do you learn proper English, if that term could be used, actually, there is no such a thing as proper English. English is English, Spanish is Spanish, languages evolve, okay? But to use that term, learn English. And so then you have to learn the structure of the language. You need to know how to write it well. You need to know the idioms, the conjugation. But more than that, also there is an element that takes place there, and it is the absorption of the cultural values, okay? So when one learns English as a second language, one not only uses the language as a vehicle of expressing your thoughts, but also as a way to learn the culture. So you would find, like right now, I'm speaking English to students and to people whose native language is Spanish, right? So right now I am behaving, and my mannerism, my gesticulation, my tone of voice is very Spanish, okay? Even my accent, which is very thick, right? I have never been able to get rid of my accent, by the way. Okay, I have tried, it's impossible. So, but then I am a Panamanian, I am a Santiagueñan. I mean, I'm just basically talking English with a Spanish accent. But when one is in the United States or in the UK, and I have been both places, I live in both places, then it is a totally different story, okay? The pitch of the voice is different. The mannerisms are different. Like for instance, I wouldn't move my hands like I'm doing right now in the United States or in England. And then one doesn't behave like them, okay? So that is a huge difference that exists between the English as a second language and the English as a lingua franca, in which you just learn the basic English and you communicate with people, generally with other people who don't master English, for whom English is a second language as well. For instance, if I were in a conference with neuroscientists or with other geneticists, and we were, say, in Colombia, okay, the English that I would be using and the English that they would be using would be English as a lingua franca. The expectations are very different. people wouldn't expect that my English would be perfect or that I would be speaking English like a native speaker. It would be basically a tool. So we will be very, 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 very concerned about getting our thought transmitted and communicating. So many times within that context, some people, for instance, would say, well, are we going to be on the same boat? Someone would reply, on the same boat or on the same train or on the same bus? So someone would say, well, I think that it's on the same boat. So is in the same boat or is it on the boat? So that type of clarifications, that type of doubts will be present in a conversation where English is a lingua franca. That type of conversation would not be expected when you are in a conversation with native speakers or when you study English as a second language. So it is very interesting because right now linguists are trying to do a lot of research about the commonality of different aspects within the language when English is a lingua franca. For instance, the elimination of some articles, the misplacement of some adjective, and so on, and the way in which the structure of the language is performed, okay? So it would probably be the same as happening in Latin, when people, for instance, when the Roman Empire falls, Latin was spoken in the whole empire, yet, for instance, the Spanish people, some of the Italian people, the French people adopted the classical Latin and then they modified it. And so it became vulgar Latin and it became subject of many different influences, like local influences by different tribes. So now, when we, people who study the Spanish language, and I love Spanish very much, and I love English very much, and I love Latin. So one could see, actually, one could trace the differences that exist and incorporation of some words. For instance, in Spanish, we have some contamination, as they say, but actually they are not contamination. They are influences of Arabic words. Every word in our language that starts with A-L, al, comes from Arabic. Therefore, the same thing is happening right now with English, but at a global scale. It is not just only a European scale or a United States scale. It is a global phenomenon, okay? It is not new. It is just global right now. At present, there are about over 1 billion people in the world who speak English. Then that is followed by Mandarin, which is almost about a billion, and then Hindi, and the fourth spoken language is Spanish, which has approximately 500 million people speak Spanish in the world. So we see that is an evolution of the language, and such linguists are trying to understand this phenomenon and then to find and then say, well, is this a variety of English? Does this belong to the world Englishes? Or it's just something that just is a natural evolution of language in the world? And I think that it is that. It is just the natural evolution of language. We in the world have to find a common way to communicate despite our cultures. And that is what English is providing the world right now. One day will come in which it will not be English, depending upon the growth of China, economic growth and cultural growth. Maybe we will end up speaking Mandarin in 20 years, or maybe it will be Spanish. Well, who knows? But the thing is that is the importance. So how does that relate to what we are doing right now and how about the teaching of English at the university level? I think that, well, I may not be qualified to answer that question, but I will tell you what I think. And what I think is that it is just very important, first of all, to teach the students to lose the fear of speaking English. Okay, so many times we are very, very inhibited by the fact that we have to speak sometimes with people who know English better than we do. Okay, and for me, it was a challenge when I went to study in the United States. Before I went to the United States, I actually was given a scholarship to study English at the college, the Panama Canal College. There, they taught English as a second language and also the culture, okay? proper English, proper grammar, because we had to pass all the tests necessary to be accepted in the university in the United States. We were also taught math and science and some other subjects so that we were able to be competent. My experience when I arrived in the United States, here in Panama, actually it was very interesting because here in Panama, I was, I speak English, blah, 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 with the papa in the mouth and then the hot potato. And I felt, okay, I passed my exams. I did very well. So I went to the United States. So when I go to the United States, especially Iowa, first was Miami and then Iowa. And then I met other people. They were Latin American students who studied there. So we were able to communicate, okay? So I was able to match, I was machacando, I use Spanglish, which is valid actually. I was machacando the English and I felt, oh great, I am here and I learned very good English. I tell you that my experience was so different when I went to my first lecture like this one. It was a huge auditorium and my first lecture was on zoology, okay? So the professor sat exactly where I was and he was teaching taxonomy and we were all there and I was sitting at the back. I tell you that I couldn't understand one word of what the teacher, the professor was saying. I felt, I mean, he spoke to me in a different language that I didn't know. It was, for me, it was not English. I couldn't understand anything. And I was really, really worried because I said, oh my God, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna pass this class? And then, so I went that very day to my room, to the dormitory, and I went and studied in advance because my written English was very good and my comprehension of written English was excellent. Okay, so that was not the issue. It was just that I couldn't understand a word and let alone speak, right? Because I felt very inhibited about my thick Spanish accent where we pronounce everything. Okay, so the following day, I was hoping that I could do better. And then I went to a class to the laboratory of zoology and genetics. And my instructor was Indian. So if I couldn't understand a native English speaker, because I was trained for that, then now I had an Indian speaking to me English. And I mean, I was totally lost. I thought that she was speaking Hindi. I mean, I understand what a few words that I was able to understand were Latin derived or Greek derived. Okay, so for instance, she used the word retina, which is retina in English, retina, which is the layer that covers the end of the eye. So anyway, so the thing is that that was all what I was able to understand. I said, what am I gonna do? And then everybody spoke English. Everybody spoke English. I was the only dark person in the class. And then the only person with dark eyes and a Latin. It was just, I was completely out of place. Everybody was blue, green eyed, tall, blonde, and native speaker. Okay, because I was in the middle of the United States. So it was a big challenge. And to me, I mean, I was on a scholarship. So you have to be a good student. Otherwise, you lose your scholarship, okay? So that was a big challenge. So what I did basically was I was very, very determined to do several things, okay? One of them was to read. And the other one to go and approach people, talk to them, talk to people. And even though I knew that my spoken English wasn't all that great, to be honest, I made an effort to talk to as many people as possible, people from Europe, people from Asia. I avoided speaking with people from Latin America and Panama. Not because I didn't want to mix with them. They understood that I didn't want to mix with them. That was not the point. It was like, I need to learn English and I need to pass my classes, okay? So I spoke with a lot of people and people were really, really helpful. So that was very interesting because in that way, because in the beginning it's just intimidating to go to a different culture and then, you know, to speak with people. And then in that way, for me, it was wonderful because I met some of my very best friends in life international people, okay? People that today I write to them, I call them, and some of them are from Switzerland, some of them are from Italy, some of them are from Spain. And we spoke English as a lingua franca. I mean, none of us was a native speaker, but we learned a lot. And then I made an effort also to talk to native speakers all the time, get involved, improve my skills, and then lose the fear of talking to people. So what are the benefits here? The benefits is that, first of all, one grows as a person, as a professional. One is able to acquire knowledge from other people. And as a professional, I think that it's a challenge that people in Panama, in my opinion, have not understood and appreciated yet, because we have been here in the United States and Panama with the influence of the United States for over 150 years. This is an opportunity for us to be almost native language speakers, okay? We have missed that opportunity. However, the universities, the schools, the Ministry of Education has made an effort not only to increment the amount of English that is taught in the schools. When I was a student, English began to be taught in 5th grammar grade, okay? So now it is earlier, and private schools even earlier. And then many teachers are sent to the United States, to Europe, to acquire skills. So this is an opportunity and an advantage that we have. English is a very difficult language, I tell you. I think that if there has been something difficult for me, genetics, I tell you the truth, genetics for me was not difficult at all. Okay, so for me, it was easy. The big challenge was English. It truly is. Yeah, it is very difficult language, because first of all, we need to understand that Spanish is a very logical language. Spanish has a very a clear set of rules, and we can always go back to the Latin or even to Greek, but mostly Latin, and then find the origin of the words, and we can relate to them. For instance, lingua, no? Tongue, and also means language. So these things are very clear and straightforward in Spanish. In English, it's not like that. You basically memorize the language, and you don't have to think too much about whether something makes sense or doesn't make sense, because even for native speakers, the language is learned. The rules are to be broken all at the time. When it comes to the spelling, the way in which we write the English language is just very, very difficult. So you would find a lot of native English speakers making huge mistakes that non-native speakers would never make. Okay, so that why I'm saying that because it is very important to lose the fear. Okay, so if we are conscious that there is English as a second language in which you want to fulfill the expectations, especially the professional expectations of native English speakers, you have to make an extra effort to make your English as beautiful as possible, so that you can sometimes even impress people. Like they would listen to you and they would know that you have an accent, but then you would use words and grammatical structures that not even themselves could actually, yeah, truly, that they would be like, how do you know that? Or where do you learn this? So that is very important. The other part is reading. I mean, this is a tough critique, but Panamanians hate reading, okay? Not even the newspapers. And that is a big deficit in our educational system and in our culture. And you will not find that in other cultures, especially in the United States. You go to the bus station, you take a bus, you take a train, and people will be reading, even the newspapers. You go to Europe, the same, you will see people with piles of books. Here is not the case, okay? So it is very important to be conscious that reading increases your vocabulary and your understanding of a language. because it helps you to build a mental structure about how sentences and paragraphs are made, and also the variation of words. For instance, one word could mean something in English from the United States and could mean something different in England. Okay, so all those things I think that we need to take into consideration, and that we will know not only about speaking, communicating with other people, but studying and reading. For instance, the word gratis. Gratis is a word in Spanish that means free in Latin. Okay, so gratis. In the United States, you don't use the word gratis. You use the word for free. And I would use an example. I am trying to license out some copyrights, figures and tables for my next article for a year. So I have to have a clearance of the tables and figures that I will be reusing so that I could publish it. Otherwise, I will do some copyright infringement. So what will happen is that I will request that and I will ask for free, okay? That means that I don't have to pay anything. That is for us in Spanish, gratis, okay? For free. If I were to make the same request in the UK or in Europe, I wouldn't use the word for free, which is gratis. I would use the word gratis, which specifically means that I don't have to pay anything for it. It is gratis, it is gracious, it is a courtesy, okay? So those things are very important. And when it comes to the lingua franca, then again, it will evolve. The importance is to communicate. You don't have to lose your fear. It's basically, I mean, if you basically get by with it, it is okay, it is accepted, and then it is something that's acceptable. So with that, I will conclude. I think that it is very important that people are conscious that there are different types of English in the world, and that the most important thing is basically to be able to communicate. Now, if you are going to study and live in the United States, you better learn English very well. Otherwise, people will discriminate you, because that unfortunately is the nature of the culture, in which if you speak English with an accent, immediately you are a Latino, you are a Hispanic, you are from a different planet. Inferior, by the way. But then if you speak your English, even with an accent, beautifully and correctly, then you will impress people and people will respect you. Okay, so just go ahead and lose your fear. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes. Okay, dear audience, if you have any question to Dr. Ivy Sanchez is here about lingua franca that we have been talking. Yes, there's a student there, okay?
Maybe we are something. The thing that you most learn is scientific vocabulary, right?
No. Well, go ahead.
How much time takes you to learn that vocabulary? It is not a vocabulary that we speak here.
Actually, no. I didn't speak scientific or technical language at all, because that was what I mean. Yes, I did specialize in genetics. Later, I have written books. But in order to write a book, for instance, in the field of healthcare and other, I write also about art. I also am an art historian. So I have published, and I recently wrote an article. It will be published a book on art, actually. So it was not a scientific language. Scientific language is a different subject, okay? So you could use lingua franca among scientists to communicate, but you could use a biomedical, technical, physical English with those experts. In this case, it wasn't, because the technical language is something that you learn later on as you become an expert or as you increase your knowledge within your program. The first, I learned English as a second language, okay? There is no doubt about it. But then when you go and talk to people as a lingua franca with Europeans, with other people, they come from economics, they came from economics, they come from art, history, philosophy, other subjects, and even with other people who were not educated people. For instance, I had to communicate sometimes with the janitors. That is the people who, like we call trabajadores manuales, the janitor, someone who cleans and makes the cleaning in the university, or people who do that, or the cleaning lady, for instance, empleados domésticos, and empleada doméstica in this case. And then, so this was not the case. The technical language is very easy, I think. I mean, it is, you learn those terms, but then when you have to speak with people, it's a very, very different story. So it was not scientific or technical language when I learned. It was English as a second language. And then within that process, I sometimes had to use English as a lingua franca to communicate with other people who were not English native speakers. Okay? Any other question? I love questions, and actually this is a good, I hope that I'm not delaying the panel, but I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for you to practice your English, to lose your fear, and to answer a question from someone who has gone through the process.
Can you come?
If you have any
Can
questions.
you come, please? Because remember that we are sending this via. Come, yes, to ask the question. We have other panelists online. Doctor, since you had that experience going to America, and then it happens that when we go to the United States, we expect to learn from American teachers, right? And then we find in reality that we might have a Chinese professor, as you had experienced a professor from India, right? And then I conducted a research about attitudes toward non-native speakers professors. Did you have that experience, maybe not as a professor there, but as a lecturer there? How did you feel that attitude of being accepted? And what should we do in order to be accepted? Because my English is not good. This is my second language. But here I have knowledge to share. I have something to say. It doesn't mean that I do not speak language like very fluent. It doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm saying. So what are the recommendations in order to avoid those attitudes? Because that is what I tell my students. We are not preparing students local anymore. We are preparing students for the global world. Where we go, we have a word. We have something to say, and that is what I'm telling my students. What would be your recommendation, Doctor?
Actually, thank you very much, because that is an excellent question. Yeah, that is an excellent question, and very, very opposite points. Opposite, if people don't know what opposite is, it's not just to show up, but opposite means the adequate, the proper, the appropriate points at this lecture. And yes, first of all, I think that one has to build self-esteem. That's it. You need to know where you are placed in this planet and who you are. That is the thing. The other thing is just always to be very proud of your identity and of your nationality. In my case, I mean, I am from Santiago. I am from here. I'm a Cholito de Santiago. I mean, for me, when I'm here, it is like I never went to the United States. It's never like I live and went to Europe. Everything is left behind. So because I'm a person, okay? And I'm a person who wants to strive and who wants to reach goals and who wants to be to be a contributor to the improvement of society. So that is the first step. You need to know who you are. When you go to the United States and in Europe to some extent, when you go to the United States, first of all, sometimes it depends where you go. Like, for instance, I went to the Middle West, initially to Iowa. Then from Iowa, I went to New York. I did travel around, but then living first in Iowa. So there were a lot of people from the United States who were never exposed to people from different cultures at all, who had never interacted with someone with a dark skin. So the first thing that they will tell you, or some of them, not always, the first thing is that some people will tell you, if they have prejudice, is like, I don't understand what you're saying. What? It would not be, oh, like we are different. Our Europeans are very polite. We say, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. I cannot understand. Could you repeat it, please? That is what we said. We try to make an effort to understand what people say, even if it is incorrect. When a gringo comes here, then he say, yeah, la caballa, la jamón, yo me bañé con la jamón. And then you know that it's no la caballa, and say, oh, caballo. Or you say, oh, jamón. And we are very polite. They are not that considerate at all. I mean, it would be like, what? I don't understand. And sometimes they even pretend that they don't understand, even if they could, because they don't want to make an effort. So you will find that type of people. Not everybody is like that. And then when you are in an academic city or in an academic center, people are more flexible because obviously they go to the university, they go to college, and they pursue an advanced degree. It is a different mentality. But in general, you will find like, what? Oh, you are speaking too fast for me. I don't understand what you're saying. It is like that. So therefore, you have to build that self-esteem and be patient with yourself, and then challenge yourself to learn a good English, to pronounce every word, to exercise and to speak to other people. Because the first things, in the United States, I tell you, and even in Boston is a beautiful city, it's a cultural city. It tends to be very elitist in the sense that you have to have higher education degrees, the level of cultures, people are rich, etc. So if you are there and then you open your mouth, I mean, the moment I open my mouth, I haven't even pronounced a word and people know that I speak Spanish. I like Spanish. And truly, I mean, it's like, my name, Spanish. Oh, you speak Spanish, where are you from? So we should expect that, okay? And then also prove that we are intelligent people. Because honestly, if you have an accent, they think that you are stupid and that you don't know what you are talking about. And it did happen to me at the university where some professors, and then I figured out that it was true. It was not like my impression, okay? And this gets a little bit into the cultural thing, and I hope that I am not extending too much myself. But it is important because many of you will study or live in the United States or in a different country. Then, when you are there, and then the stigma is like, you talk about Panama, they say Noriega or Panama Canal, or you arrived in the United States illegally. Or in my case, I was a recipient of a U.S. government scholarship. And the first thing they will say, oh, they don't give that scholarship to our students, why do they give it to you? And they tell it to you like that. And then you have to be able to answer, well, they gave it to me because I am intelligent enough. I'm more intelligent and better prepared than many of you to receive that scholarship. And I did say that, and I would be able to repeat it today, okay? And that is the situation. When you go to a conference, for instance, I had to be a lecturer at the New York Public Library, okay? That was a huge thing, and it was transmitted on TV all over the United States. You can access actually it on C-SPAN, it's on the internet. And then you have to give a lecture in English to lay people and at a public library, and it will be transmitted all over the United States. So that is a challenge, but then you put on your best English, okay? And then you practice, and then you go and then you project your knowledge. The same also in an interview on C-SPAN in English. You go on there and then C-SPAN interviews people like President Obama, President Clinton, high-profile people, and then you are there, and then you are a Panamanian, and then you are being interviewed in English. So, and then you definitely have to be very conscious of it. Okay, so my advice to you is, first of all, two things. First of all, to build on your self-esteem and respect for yourself. And second, do the best that you can to demonstrate that you are not stupid because you are not a native English speaker, and you have to do it. I tell you that, okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Luis.
Now we have Dr. Jose Loaiza. Jose Loaiza, SDRI, Research Associate and Senior Scientist at the Institute for Scientific Research and High Technology Service of Panama. Dr. Loaiza has a PhD from Canada. He keeps on doing research every year with hundreds of citations. He travels to different parts of the world to explain his findings.
Dr. Jose Loaiza.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can, Profe.
Can you hear me? I don't know if you guys can hear me. Please, someone tell me if you can hear me.
Yes, Professor, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, good morning, everyone, and thanks to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to address such a great audience in my hometown. I'm also a Cholito from Santiago. I had the opportunity to study abroad. I'm a scientist, I'm a biologist, and although I was born in Panama City, I grew up in Santiago, and I did all my public school, primary and secondary school in Santiago as well. And I actually was a professor at the
Dr. Loaiza, we are having some technical issues. I don't know if you have some YouTube or something there. Please, please turn down the volume, please.
All right, let me give it a try. What about now? Can you hear me now?
Something with the microphone, please. May you turn the volume up, please?
What now? Can you hear me better now? Hi.
I can listen. I can hear properly.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
But someone else in the audience cannot hear me, apparently.
No, you think that is, but it's not.
I think the people who are online can hear you, but
Okay.
maybe not the people who are at the auditorium.
Okay, I understand. So what should we do? Should I stop sharing the screen?
Yeah, everything is done, doctor. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And as I was saying earlier, thank you for the opportunity. I'm honored to be part of this session. And after that provocative discussion that we just had with Dr. Ivis, I have to say that to me, English has been a struggle, and I'm still struggling to learn this language. And as he explained it very well, it's a process that takes a lot of time, courage, and a lot of discipline. You have to study basically throughout the entire time. And so it's something that you have to keep with you, whatever you do. And in my case, as a scientist, I have to learn, in my view, a tougher English, because it's not just English to communicate with people, but to convey my results and the outcomes of my research. And so what I want to do today is basically walk you through my experience being a Panamanian, being from Santiago, how I had to struggle with this language in order to become a scientist in Panama. And so the photos that you see here on the right is basically what a scientist does. Like, it's basically what my life. It's been going to the field and collecting biological samples, bringing those samples to the lab, doing some fancy molecular techniques, gathering data, write a manuscript, submit it to an international journal, get accepted, get it published, and then go to a conference locally or internationally and present those outcomes. And so that's basically the cycle of activity that a scientist does. And it's quite fun. I have to say, it's a way of enjoying life, not just because you do what you like. In my case, I research about diseases that are infectious and that are vectored by mosquitoes, but also because you learn a lot. And it's like a machine that you never stop and you always learn new things. And it becomes your mantra. It becomes the way of living. So always learning, always advancing and growing professionally. So English has been key in my professional development. And I have to be honest with you guys, I learned English when I was 28 years old. So same as many of you, I went to the public school system in Panama. I did my primary school, my high school in Santiago. And although teachers did a good job in teaching me the basic English, it wasn't enough to be able to do science with that. And so it was really tricky. And so I want to stress that English opened a lot of opportunities for me to become who I am now, and not only professionally, but also knowing new people and opening doors to get new people and what they do and how they do it. And so I think this is really relevant for this talk. Let me see if I can advance this. Okay, so here's the subject of my studies, mosquitoes, and I'm sure many of you knows mosquitoes. They feed on blood and they breed around our houses. Many times we have mosquitoes around the house, in our gardens, in the backyard, and we don't even know. And the bad thing from these creatures is that they transmit pathogens that cause disease in humans. And I'm sure you guys have heard about dengue, malaria, Zika, and all those viruses. And I'm sure some of you probably picked them as well and had suffered from those diseases. And so they're really important from the public health standpoint. And that's why I dedicate my entire life to research about these creatures. And so, as I was saying, I study at the University of Panama, my bachelor, my master's degree. And then right at that moment when I was about to decide, well, what would I do at the rest of my life, someone from the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute came along and told me, hey, why don't you apply for a PhD in Canada? And so I said, well, I would love to go to Canada and further my education. But then the problem was that I had no knowledge of English at that level. And so at that point, I remember that someone in Santiago, whose name is Miguel, I think he's probably in the audience now, trained me as to how I can conduct the TOEFL test. And I needed to pass with 550. And I remember that I scored 553. So I passed the test with 3 points. And it was thanks to Miguel that helped me. I think he had a Pan American Academy kind of school at that point. I don't know where he is right now, but he was really helpful to me at that point. And all of a sudden, I'm in a plane to Montreal to engage in one of the best universities in Canada, which is McGill. And I spent there 5 years doing my PhD. And then after that, everything became a lot easier. I did a postdoctoral term at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, and now I'm a research scientist here in Panama. And so English really made a difference in my case. And I'm going to tell you a bit about what I do in terms of research. So I studied disease ecology, and you have lived through the pandemic of COVID-19 pandemic, and this is caused by a virus named SARS-CoV-2. And what happens is that as people grow and cities grow, they encroach into natural habitats such as tropical rainforests. And a lot of the viruses that cycle among wildlife animals, such as bats, for example, can spill over into human community. And so this is basically what I do as a scientist. I look at this interface and at this frontier, these interactions, new interactions between humans and wildlife that cause the emergence of new pathogens. And all of you, I'm sure, know about this now because you've suffered through it. And so when people cause deforestation and alter the habitat, a lot of the animals that are reservoir of these viruses go extinct, they disappear. And so as a result of that, many of these pathogens, not only viruses, but also bacteria and fungi, can jump then into people. And so we have seen viruses such as Zika virus, for example, the pandemic back in 2014 and 2015, Ebola virus that locally hasn't arrived into the Americas yet, but is there popping up from the forest, MERS, and now COVID-19. And so there's a relationship between the alteration that human cause in the environment and the spillover of some of these infectious diseases. And again, this is what I do, but I focus mostly on the mosquito aspect. So I'm an entomologist. So I look at insects, and mosquitoes are insects, creatures that have 3 pair of legs and fly around and cause a lot of issues. But then the conceptual framework that I use is to look at these diseases through a gradient of habitat alteration, from the forest that is pristine into rural areas and into urban areas. And basically what we have seen is that humans actually cause this alteration, making changes that force animals and mosquitoes to adapt to new situations and new environments. And so what happens is that mosquitoes adapt to live with humans. And one of the cases is Aedes aegypti that lives with us. These mosquitoes lay eggs in the water that we accumulate. It lives inside our houses because it protects themselves from the solar radiation and the heat. And we provide them with blood. So they feed on our blood and reproduce and lay eggs, and the whole cycle perpetuate and then keep going forward. And so again, the important thing here is that humans are causing a significant alteration of the natural habitat where these creatures live. And so they are forced to adapt to new conditions. And as a result of that, we're getting more mosquitoes. And so more mosquitoes in urban areas means more bites and more disease transmission. And so this is sort of the conceptual framework that I use to study these diseases. Lately, we have learned that this infectious disease issue is quite complicated, it's quite complex. And traditionally, we have looked at these issues individually in an isolated fashion. Medical doctors look at the disease in humans, veterinarians look at the disease in animals, biologists look at the problem in the environment. And this is not enough for us to actually be able to understand such a complicated and intricate issue. So the One Health, what translate into Spanish means una salud, does is that we have to join efforts among different disciplines to do collaborative research and try to understand this issue of infectious diseases. So this is a new concept that people are tackling so that we can understand how disease spillover occur when people alter natural ecosystem. And so this is another important idea that I use in my research to understand infectious diseases. I'm currently a research scientist at INDICASAT. INDICASAT is a unique institute in Panama. It has only 20 years. We recently celebrated the 20th anniversary of the institution. And what I said by unique is that it's been run by Panamanian scientists. And this is really nice, being part of this family of great researchers who have published in the last 20 years more than 400 publications in peer-reviewed journals, international peer-reviewed journals. And this is really great to see how science in the country is growing. And hopefully at some point, INDICASAT will build the branch in the interior of Panama, hopefully in Santiago, and we'll be able to grow regionally as well. And so INDICASAT, again, does One Health kind of research, and it uses biomedicine, biodiversity, and biotechnology as a backbone to conduct research. And again, all these scientists that you see in this photo are probably the product of the education system of Panama, but they struggle, they battle hard, same as Dr. Ibis was saying that he was in a struggle as well, and he succeeded because he was persistent in pursuing his goals. All these people did the same, and they're proudly now doing research in Panama. So this is my team, what I call the mosquito team, and it's fun to have a group of students and colleagues from all over the place. I've been really blessed. I have students from the United States, from the UK, from Spain, from Brazil, from Colombia, from all over across Central America. And as Dr. Ives was saying in the previous talk, lingua franca, but specific English, like English for science, have allowed me to communicate with all the students, and being a mentor in their careers have been really, really great. And so English not only allow me to understand scientific matters, to write scientific documents, but also to communicate fluently and effectively with my students so that we can conduct research at the higher level possible. Education is the key. And again, I don't really feel bad about my accent. I don't care about what people think about the way I speak. I know I'm smart and I'm able to understand complicated matters better than the average human being. And so I'm not caught up by, things such as accent and pronunciation. What really, really matters, of course, you have to do a great effort to sound the best possible way. And I've learned that myself through a lot of a struggle, because I have to face audiences around the world and give speeches, and it's really, really tricky. But it's important to communicate effectively. And even if you have an accent from Latin America, doesn't really matter. What matters is that people understand what you're saying, and people can relate to what you are conveying as an outcome. And so I have a lot of opportunities to face audiences and train people. So one thing, and this is just one piece of advice that I can give you, is try to teach someone else English. Try to talk to someone else in English all the time. And that'll help you to improve very slowly. If you make this a habit, you'll see the improvement as you go. And so I have a lot of opportunities to train folks here in Panama. In collaboration with the Smithsonian Science Education Center, we run a series of workshops training people as to how they can control mosquito breeding size around the house. And this is important because we need to increase the number of people that are aware of these issues, and so that we can control them more effectively. Again, training students has been really a bless. And, you're not just a mentor, you become a friend, you become a family member. As they grow and they develop, you see that it's really rewarding to have a crew of people under your mentorship. And I've been blessed when I go to the field with them. There's a lot of details in English that you don't usually pick up from the books or from the papers, but by communicating every day, by talking to people every day, you really, really get a sense as to how you can improve your ability to speak and to understand. And so I have a lot of students from the University of Texas at El Paso who are bilingual. They speak both English and Spanish perfectly, both languages beautifully, but they speak to me in English. And so they speak to me in English because science is spoken in the English language. It's not just lingua franca, but the language of science in general is English. So scientists communicate using English. And this is really important. Also, when you go to the lab, you have to learn all these difficult techniques and a lot of acronyms and a lot of short words that are hard to memorize, then you really learn a lot by interacting with people. So I encourage you to interact as much as possible. Find a friend, find a colleague, speak English every day, listen to podcasts, be aggressive as to how you can improve your English. And I've been blessed again because through my students, I've been able to improve my skills. And again, I will never sound as a native speaker, but that is not the point. The point is to become whoever you want to become and use English as a tool to get there. Publications is in the activities that a researcher does, a research scientist does, the most important one. And so we've been really successful. We've published more than 54 papers in international journals. And this has been by far the trickiest, the toughest job I had. Because one thing is to speak English. Another thing is to understand English. But to write English in a scientific framework is the hardest and the toughest activity you can do in this language. And so I'm happy that we have been able to do all this great work, and again, with the help of my students. But again, even elaborating a piece of paper takes a lot of time. And so you have to make a habit of reading, you have to read a lot, and you have to write aggressively as well. And this will come with time. You will improve as you do it regularly. Getting funded, and I'm sure other people know about this, getting funded to do research is the hardest part. And again, the second hardest part, everything is hard in science, but to be able to convince a group of experts in the field to give you money to do research, this is another toughest, really tough activity that you have to do. And so we have been able to get funded through Senacid, which is a local agency. They have provided most of the funds of my research, but I've been able to apply to the National Institute of Health as well. That it's an institution of the United States government, and we have got funded through that as well, and to many other institutions from Europe and from Latin America as well. And so, again, you have to read deeply, understand, and then be able to write a proposal so that you can get funded. And this is probably the most difficult part, public outreach, because you can be a good scientist, you can publish all the papers, you can write good papers, but then when it comes to translate those findings into the public, into the general public, it becomes really tricky. And I've struggled the most in this part because I'm not eloquent as, for example, Dr. Ivis, who give a great presentation. Previous presentation was really insightful and educational. I don't have those skills, and so it's harder for me to actually communicate with the public and make them understand how my research impact their life and can improve the way of living. So this is work in progress. And at the end, probably the most important thing from being a scientist is that you get to know a lot of people. You get to collaborate with many people around the world. And there are good people there that, even though they know you're not a native speaker, even though they know that you don't speak English perfectly, they'll be willing to help. They will be willing to support you. And so I think at the end, the most important outcome of learning English in my professional career have been that I've made great friends around the globe that communicate with me in English, and we've kept that friendship. And today I'm happy that I've been hosted for many institutions have hosted me for conferences and talks and to do research in a collaborative way. And so again, thank you very much for this great opportunity. And I wish the best of luck to you guys in learning the language. And I hope you fulfill all your goals, professional and emotional, and then you go back to our Santiago, beautiful Santiago, and help us to grow as a community. Thank you very much.
Activate your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can hear it better. Yeah, Hello? There's an echo in the.
Dr. Liza, thank you so much for your participation, for your conference. So if there are any questions from the audience, you can come to ask a question to Dr. Liza. Any question?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Liza, we have a question for Professor Nadia.
Good morning, Professor Dr. Loaiza. I just have to say thank you very much to you and Dr. Iris. This is exactly what I wanted to have people your category to illustrate our students on what to do and how to do it to become a great academic people like you two. My question is, do you think to become an international researcher or well-known internationally speaking, do professionals have to know English, or do you think they can do it without knowledge of this language? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a great question. To be a scientist, you require a specific set of skills. I would say that you don't need to speak English to be a great scientist, honestly. Unfortunately, English is the language that science speaks. And so to be able to be part of a scientific community, that loop is really important. You need to learn English. Otherwise, your research, the outcome of your research would not be exposed to the rest of the scientific community, and then it will be hard for you to establish yourself as a scientist. But I would say that learning English, although hard, it's also a lot of fun. And as I said, when I was 28, I barely spoke anything. I couldn't really say hello, or, and now I feel like my brain had expanded, had grown, and I think not just English, learning many different languages is an activity that everyone should do, honestly, because there's a lot of areas of the brain that are not used, in my view, and as you learn different languages, then you can use those areas. And definitely, you don't need English to be a great scientist, especially now with all the resources that you have. People translate, they write their papers in Spanish and then translate into English. The problem is that to be able to be part of the discussion with other great scientists, you really need to learn the language. Otherwise, you'll be isolated. And I hope that answers your question.
Well, we are going to have, it doesn't work. We are going to have a pause here for a second to again say thank you to Dr. Ibi Sanchez and for him to have, you know, the so good thoughts about being here with us. So Professor Dr. Ibis, we are going to give you our certificates saying thank you for your participation and a little something, which we know is nothing, but anyway, thank you very much, and we hope to see you before you go to the US again to be with us for an event like this. Thank you, Dr. Ibis. Professor Danette. Why didn't you? Sí, sí, te parece.
That's why that happens. For sure, with your advice, lovely Santiago. So, in behalf of the English school, we have the pleasure to give you this beautiful.
You guys have a question or something like that, just please count on me while I am here. Or if I am not here, we could do it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's continue with our conference. Thank you so much, Dr. Ibis. Thank you so much, Dr. Loaiza. We have present and certificate for the all panelists. Okay, people, dear audience, professors, students, we have our next panelist. She comes us via Mexico, France, and the USA before returning to her native country, Panama. She has taught English as a second language for over 10 years in public and private school. She has also worked at Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá, Universidad Tecnológica Oteima, and Universidad de Panamá. She holds a bachelor in computer programming and another in humanities with an emphasis on English. She currently has 3 master's degrees in higher learning, didactics of the English language, and digital education. This is Magister Arlene Sandoval.
Good morning, everyone. I look a little crazy here, but my name is Arlene Sandoval. First of all, I want to thank for inviting me. Thank you very much. And I also want to acknowledge the organizers. It is extremely difficult to put an event like this together. So thank you for all your work. Okay, so my part of the number one, can everyone hear me well?
Loud and clear, Arlene.
Thank you,
Arlene?
Eva.
Yeah, everything is okay.
Perfect. Okay. So my part here in the conference today is teaching English with the aid of ICTs. And I should say this is not only teaching, but also learning. So ICT will help you do both things. So we hear a lot of terms when it comes to technology. And so I just want to make, ICT, it refers to technological tools that are used to communicate and to manage information. So as you can see, the spectrum is huge, okay? So when we talk about ICT, we're talking about the internet. We're talking about your cell phones, your tablets, your computers. We're talking about hardware. So the actual components that make up those devices. We're talking about software, applications, okay? We're talking about chatting, texting, being able to create video, okay? So as you can see, ICT is everything. And we have this, as I'm gonna move a little bit to the side, Aslin Sainal, she wrote a research study, ESL teachers' use of ICT in teaching English literature. And she stated that the most important factor for effective integration of ICT in the English language teaching, so in your classrooms, is the teacher, okay? So the teacher has to have the knowledge and the skills in using ICT in class. So I'm gonna continue with some of the research that is out there and to make a case for ICTs and the use of them in the classroom. Shatner and Fagno, they said that technology increases the students' learning, their understanding, and their achievement. And also it helps them, it motivates them to learn. It encourages them to collaborate, okay? And they start thinking about problem-solving skills. Russell and Sorge also stated that the proper implementation of technologies in the classroom gives students more control of their own learning, which is extremely powerful. And finally, David Johansen, he said that the knowledge is embedded in the technology, okay? So when we talk about films, TV shows, radio stations, everything that we look through technology, knowledge is embedded into that. And that technology, well, we presented or presents that knowledge to our students. So what are some of the benefits for students? We have that technology will allow more personalized learning experience. So students can choose whether they want to be online, if they need to work during the day and they can only study at night, they can do that through the internet, through their computers. Also, it improves the students' communication skills. So it's been researched that when students use technology, they have more chances or more opportunities to have meaningful conversations. And also it helps students prepare for the future. By using technology, we can learn on how to do something for our future career or in our future career, presentations, maybe sending information or creating content, right? Technology in the classroom can play a traditional role. So we can continue doing our classes as we have usually done them, except that we're going to use technology to deliver some of those components, okay? We can also use technology in the classroom as a tool to support knowledge construction. So instead of me doing a extended lecture, Maybe I find a really good video on an expert in maybe neurolinguistics that I can have you watch, and you're going to learn from that, right? So you can construct your knowledge from watching things on the internet and using technology. We can also use technology in the classroom as a context to support learning by doing. So when we leave a project, when we leave a final exam, maybe we can create content, or your students are going to be creating content, right? So maybe you ask them to create a website, or maybe a blog or a podcast. So by doing a podcast, they are learning. They are learning how to use that, and they're learning critical thinking abilities, that it's really important. And also technology in our classroom is as an intellectual partner. And this is going to be an intellectual partner for us teachers, okay? As I said before, maybe you find some expert, think about maybe having Bill Clinton in your classes, right? So what are the possibilities of actually having Bill Clinton in my classroom? 0 to none. But by using technology, I can have Bill Clinton in my class. Something that I try to do in all of my classes, and a lot of the teachers here who've had experiences going to train with Panama Bilingüe to England or Scotland or the United States, Canada, had the opportunity to meet people. Something that I do is that I invite those people into my classroom, okay? I usually take a day of my classes to have a guest. And it could be as easy as a meet and greet. Hey, my name is, I work, and your students get really excited to talk to a native person. Or maybe I get an expert in neurolinguistics, an expert in how language is developed. And those are assets that you can bring into your classroom with technology. Once again, they don't have to fly to Panama. They don't have to pay hotel accommodation. They don't have to be driven anywhere. They only have to be given a link, and they'll connect from their homes into our classrooms. Okay, so this is a lot of like the basic. And I'm going to now talk a little bit about my experience integrating ICTs into the classrooms, right? So we had something called blended learning. And blended learning is like the new way to do things, right? And blended learning actually talks about, the name says it, blending. So maybe you have a classroom, a physical classroom, or maybe you have some classes online. Maybe you have an hybrid, right? You have out of your 6 classes, 3 are going to be face-to-face, and 3 of them are going to be virtual. Or maybe you have 6 sessions and 3 of them are going to be asynchronous, meaning at the same time online, and some of them are going to be asynchronous, meaning I leave you some projects and you work on them on your own time, okay? So the blended learning talks about the flip model is one of the approaches that it has. And flipped, that only means that we can, as teachers, we can leave assignments to our students prior to our class, so that when our students come to class, they already come prepared. They know what we're going to be talking about. They know what type of discussions we're going to have, so that the discussions we have in the classroom are more meaningful, okay? We also have, I spoke about the face-to-face drive model, and that is, having, once again, face-to-face sessions. Then I have project-based, problem-based, and I put problem-based twice, I'm sorry. The third one is scenario-based. It was meant to be scenario-based. So we're going to have a project, or we're going to have a problem, or we're going to have a scenario that we can give the student and say, okay, so this is the problem. How would you fix it? Working groups, make 5 people figure out how to work out a problem. Or maybe we're going to have a project. One of the projects that I've done, and I'll show you a little bit later, is I had my students, we were learning about geography of Southeast Asia. And so what I did is I separated them into groups and I had them work on a website. They had to create a website as their trimestral grade to show me what was that country like. So we said, oh, we're going to make websites for tourists. So you're going to talk about the physical geography. You're going to talk about what they like to eat, what are their customs, what is their political background, and how would you go about getting there? And they created the most amazing websites. Okay, scenario-based. I use scenario-based a lot with my in my master courses, because we are trying to teach teachers how to become better teachers, right? So a lot of that is scenarios, and I like to put those scenarios, I like to make them local. Okay, so how would you teach a police officer how to speak English to a foreigner who he just stopped in the middle of the road? So that's the scenario. A cop, he pulls you over, he walks over, he says, deme su licencia. And the guy goes, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know any Spanish, right? So what would he do? What would you do? How would you teach that person? So these are very good tools to teach, to learn for our students. The word report is that we usually give vocabulary words to our students without any context. So I like to do word reports where the students, instead of learning 12 words, he can learn 1 word and do a report about it. So where the roots of that word, how do you use it? What other words come from that root? Are there any sayings? Are there any idioms? And they do a small report on that word. Okay, so that's a little bit of the context. Before I move into the actual practical stuff, I want to make sure that you guys know that in order to have technology in schools, there's roles. There's 3 major components of technology in the classroom. Obviously, the teacher would be one, right? We are going to be developing the knowledge and skills. We're going to be facilitating learning. We're going to create learning opportunities. The learner, right? The new learner, 21st century learner, should be self-directed, self-motivated, self-regulating. This is a lifelong learning experience or process. It's not just the 1 year commitment, but also the administrators then have a role, okay? And the administrator has to create the learning environment. They have to give us the computers, the Wi-Fi. They have to give us, provide the infrastructure, right? And the resources. So once again, this is a 3-tier endeavor. It's not just a one person does all. Okay, so I'm going to show you this really quick, and then I'm going to actually get out of the presentation and show you what to do. But these are for reading, okay, reading skills. We have Google Scholar, Internet Archive, Lit2Go, Amazon Kindle, many things, org. We also have, for writing skills, we have Purdue and Word Hippo, things like Snappy Words and Witty Comics and ePals. For speaking, I use Flip and Anchor a lot. And once again, I'll talk about those in a little bit. Listening skills, things like TuneIn, Teachers Talk Radio, very important if you want to keep in touch with other teachers around the world and learn from what they're doing. We have Listen English, which is an app, Learn English podcast, and This American Life. I love This American Life personally. And then pronunciation, we have things like Yes La America, US, and Elsa Speak, and Interactive IPA Chart. And also there's something called Translate that I will show you as well in a little bit. And before I continue, I'm going to send you through the chat, I'm going to send you a link to join the WhatsApp group for this conference and myself. So if you're interested in receiving a list of tools that I'm going to show here, just join the group and then let me know. Okay. Okay. So let me change now. Okay. So I'm changing now my screen, and hopefully let me know if you're seeing Lit to Go on your screen. I believe you are. Yes. Okay. So in this Lit to Go, right? This is a website that we can use and find books and poems. You can search by authors, by books, by genre, collections, readability, and you can just go, well, this is the features for this month. But if I go by books, let's say, okay, I'm going to find The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. You're going to find a lot of classical American books, okay, and British too. And if you go ahead and click on one of these, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, you're going to be able to read the book, okay? Chapters, how many chapters? And you're going to be able to go into those, right? You're going to be able to listen to them, okay? And you're going to be able to go ahead and read, as I said. Okay, so that is Lit to Go. I apologize, I'm going really fast. You guys can chat with me, you know, send me a text and let me know if I can help you further. Okay, Internet Archive, also the same. This is a library. It has thousands of books. It has links to American libraries, so like the Boston Library or the Chicago Library or Los Angeles. You can go to different libraries around the country, and also they will lend you books. So they'll lend you books virtually. They'll give you a book. They also have podcasts. They also have videos. So it's a extremely helpful website. Okay. I want to talk about Google Scholar because as professors, you know, we're always looking, and I'm going to do a ICT in the classroom, right? Okay. So we're always trying to find research, right? So what works, what doesn't work? And Google Scholar allows us to do that. We can search articles. You can say the range, like I only want articles in the last 2 years. So I'm gonna pick since 2021, and they're gonna show me the results of ICT in the classroom. And they'll tell me if it is an HTML or a PDF, right? If I can download it or not, if I can read it or not. And you might need to become a member in some of these, but it's usually all you need is an email address and to sign in. Okay, so that is Google Scholar. Okay, many things org. This one is a little bit more geared towards English learning itself. So it has by beginners, So by levels, beginners, intermediate, and advanced. It has a daily study. So students could decide to start doing a daily study at manythings.org. And, you know, like I can take here page 69, and it's going to give me a reading with the audio, right? And then it usually has a list of words, okay, that you can learn. At the end, there's usually just a list of words, okay? Like I said, I'm moving quickly. We're running a little late. This is Word Hippo, and Word Hippo, it's, I'm gonna use like realize. And I'm gonna find it. And it's going to give me the meaning of the word. It's going to maybe sound out that word for me. It's going to give me context, okay? It's going to tell me other, so synonyms, you know, of the verb to realize, other words that I can use. It's also going to give me, well, verbs. It gives you synonyms and antonyms. So here they are. Okay, so synonyms, antonyms, definitions, rhymes, sentences with the word realize, whatever word you want to do. Okay, we also have this snappy word. And snappy word, it's really cool because it's a visual online dictionary. So what that does is that if I put the same word realize, okay, it's going to go ahead and show me, you know, all the nouns, you know, the verbs, the adjectives, and the adverbs that can come out of the word realize. So realize, to gain, to take in clear, to recognize, to accomplish, to know, to appreciate, to understand. This is a really cool one because it gives you a graphic and your brain can absorb that information right away. Okay. Sometimes we're writing and we're thinking, what other words can I use that is not realized? I've used realize 17 times now and I want to change it. So that will allow you to do that. Okay. Sorry, the witty comics. Here you can have your students maybe write a comic. And what witty comic does is that it'll give you the scenario and you can actually change it, change the background. You can change the people, right? The person. And then you can say, hello. And, you know, he's going to say, how are you? Obviously, this is very basic, right? But you can create comics. So your assignment could be, you know, create a comic about, you know, create a dialogue about a doctor-patient visit, right? And the students can create them here in Make a Comic. Okay, so now I'm going to move away to pronunciation. And in pronunciation, I have ESLamerica.u. And here there's an array of things that you can use, right? So pronunciation of word pairs, pronunciation of school, a new department, the 500 common L words, voice and voiceless consonants. I mean, you guys can read. So imagine all the things that you can do from here. So if I go to voiced and voiceless consonants, let's say, I'm going to get a video, okay? And that video is going to explain what the voice and voiceless consonants are, okay? Which brings me to one of my favorite things to use, which is the interactive IPA chart, so the International Phonetic Alphabet. We know as students and as teachers that phonetics is one of the hardest things to grasp in the English language. And what I like about this is that, well, first, let me say that it not only has the American vowel sounds, but it's the international APA, right? International phonetic sounds. So you're gonna see all the vowel sounds that exist in every single language in the world. But when you're studying the English ones, right? Like you can listen to them. That's French, right? We have, right? So, and you can do, it has the same for plosives, nasals, fricatives. So labiodental, ba, 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 right? So this is a really cool tool, once again, for our students and even for ourselves, to be able to master pronunciation. Here I'm going to, well, I'm going to continue, but there's one more tool that I want to show you. But that's actually, I had to make a video out of that because that's on my cell phone and I'm not sharing my cell phone online. So I'm going to move now into the writing aspect. Okay. So in ICT, when we do the writing lab, the Purdue Writing Lab. So Purdue has the APA format. So if you want to learn how to write when you're doing your dissertation or your thesis, and you need to write about, with the APA format, it will give you. It also gives you tons of information about just general writing, how to citate, right? Graduate writing. So it's just phenomenal, okay? So if I go into academic writing and, like everything that is free online, we have to watch a lot of commercials or ads. So these all resources will help you, right? And then they'll tell you like rhetorical, what is rhetorical? What is establishing an argument? What is the logic? Okay, so all you have to do is do reading, which somebody said in the past that we do not like to read. So yeah, we need to cultivate our reading habits. I'm going to flip. Actually, yeah, I think I went a little fast. So sign up or sign in. So if you go ahead and sign up, it's going to allow you to sign in with your Google accounts. I'm going to click here, right? Well, so what is Flip? Flip allows us to create videos. So you can formulate a questions to your students and give them a link, and they're going to go to that link and they're going to have to produce spoken English, right? So how do I do that? Well, the way that I do that is by creating a group, right? If I need to create a group. If I already have a group, then I'm going to, I can then create a topic. So I would add a topic. In this case, we have here, hello. A space to introduce yourself to the group, and please record a 1-minute video. At this point, your students would go ahead and say down here, add the first response. In this case, I'm using both my camera and my microphone right now, so I'm unable to do so. But if I go back, I can show you, let me see what I have here. These are like, lenguaje and communication. And right here, I have 3 responses. This is practice, but I have people who have already put in, right? So your introduction, you can do it via here, or maybe you can have a really good, you can have a really good conversation topic and have a conversation through here. Students are, sorry, students are able to respond to each of, so they can make comments on your video. It's really a cool tool. Students really like using Flipgrid, which is actually now called Flip, only Flip. I also use a lot of Anchor, and in Anchor, you can create podcasts. So this is a good way. Maybe you could create a podcast for the entire semester of your student, where they every week would have to create a spoken part. Right here, I have the uses of simple present. And if you want to just add new episode, so if I want to create a new episode, I would just click here, create an episode, and I would record it, okay? Very simple. Anchor is by Spotify, and it's a free app, okay? For listening, I have 2.
Professor Arlene,
Yes.
we are having some technical issues about the time.
Yes, I know. Okay, so let me just show you 2 things and I'm done. Once again, just let me know if you would be interested in okay, sorry. Stop share, okay. And just one quick, because I think the world out of this. This is one of my favorite. This is Elsa Speak, and I'll just play it while I speak. Elsa Speak, you can download on your phone, and as teachers, we can create our study sets. So I can create words for vocabulary, or I can create sentences, or maybe even idioms. And what this does is that allows your students to, you would go ahead and create it, and then you would go ahead and share it via internet or via WhatsApp. Once you share your created content, the students are able to practice it. They're going to have to pronounce it. The application allows you to listen to it first and then to record yourself saying it. And at the end, it gives you a grade on how well you did. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward here. So here, share, right? I'm sharing. And once they come, they open, and then they practice. And when they practice, they're going to click on the practice. I'm doing much better today, I would say now. I'm doing much better today. And I'm going to get a grade. So your students will know that they're failing, right? Where they're failing, or where they're mispronouncing. In this case, right here, okay? Okay, I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry to have taken longer.
Professor. Thank you, Professor Arlen Sandoval. Now it's time for questions, and we have a question.
Thank you so much for your participation in this conference. I got two questions for you. So the first one is, how can we use blended learning to foster language skills? And the second one is, will this tech or ICT lead to non-productive struggles and also frustration among students? Huh? Okay.
Hi. Okay, so yeah, frustration, I think frustration is felt more among, well, let me back up. There are two things. There are people who were born with technology, who are technology natives, just like when you're learned with a language. And there are those of us who are technology immigrants. And I think that, you know, for a lot of the technology immigrants, there's a lot of frustration in using technology. One thing that I can tell you is that if you have something you want to do, you know, whether it be in your class or to learn, I'm sure that there's an application for it. So all you have to do is to Google it, find it. And then if you don't know how to use it, then you go to YouTube and you Google a tutorial, and then you learn how to use that. Like everything in life, I mean, learning English, it takes practice. So you need to practice, definitely. And in terms of the blended education part, I know that part of what we're talking about today is about, you know, how is education going to be in the future? And blended education is the example. You know, after COVID, we learned that not everybody has to be in a classroom to learn, okay? That not everybody is able to be in a classroom to learn. That some people have disadvantages. They don't have internet access, or they don't have the resources to have the hardware. So blended education will allow us to be able to get to everybody in different conditions, right? Whether they have internet access, maybe we can send them the module and they can work it out at their house, right? Without having to be online. I wanted to just add one more thing about the conversation of the accent and how people are treated differently because of an accent. Remember that when you have an accent, there's only one thing that means, which is that you speak more than one language. And you should feel proud about that, not be made less of, okay? If people have problems with your accent, that is their problem, not your problem. That is their ignorance, not yours. So
Thank you.
about,
Arlene.
you know.
Okay, thanks, Professor Arlene. It was a pleasure to have you. Yes, as an expert in ICT. Well, we have our next speaker.
A passionate EFL instructor who strongly believes in community language learning and has devoted a great part of his life to training both students and other English language instructors for about 15 years. He has worked for several governmental and private universities in several provinces at both undergraduate and graduate level, and he is currently a member of the English department at Centro Regional Universitario de Copiapó. He is a licensed translator and interpreter, and he has a complete studies in TESOL, English Linguistics, Higher Education, and ECT. Similarly, he has been the coordinator of different language programs, including Meduca Regional English unit in Veraguas, and Panama bilingual at Latina University in Coble. He shows great interest in sociolinguistic studies, English language grammar, and communicative approach to language teaching, and he hopes to contribute his knowledge and experience to succeed this magnificent event.
Magister Marcel Delgado.
Thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you for giving me the chance of being here with you guys this beautiful morning. All right, I'm going to ask you to pay special attention to this picture that I'm sharing. By the way, can you see my screen?
Yes, doctor.
Yes, wonderful. All right, so this picture illustrates what we sometimes do in terms of culture. Like whenever they mention the name of a country unconsciously, right? Our mind immediately relates this region with specific items or icons. If you say, for instance, Brazil, we think of soccer. If you say Colombia, we think of good coffee, right? And what to say about Mexico? Spicy, delicious food. And United States, of course, we will immediately think of, research, NASA, a lot of commerce, right? And different aspects that represent this country, this area, but these are aspects that also influence the way we communicate with those people. So this is the reason why the committee has decided to include the topic teaching English culture, right? And my name is Marcel Delgado, and I'm really, again, thankful for having given the opportunity to share with you guys my knowledge and experience. So firstly, we need to clarify what is culture, right? What culture is. So it is defined as an ongoing negotiations of learned and pattern beliefs, attitudes, values, and behaviors. So when you put these four elements together, attitudes, values, behaviors, and beliefs, then we get what we call culture. But notice there is an important term over there, ongoing. So it means that it will not necessarily remain the same all the time, right? It can change in time. And also the word negotiations. What means is that it doesn't necessarily apply to every single person or every single member of that community. All right, so let's talk then about American culture. So what makes an American be American? Or at least what is the general knowledge that we have about them, right? One of the first elements would be individualism. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Americans are not able to work as a team. They're pretty good at this, right? But when I say individualism, I refer to the fact that since very early stages in their life, they are taught to be a separate individual. It means they are taught to succeed by themselves without relying so much on sort of groups like family or religious groups or political, groups, etc. So they are taught to be independent, right? And they celebrate this independence. Similarly, they are also aware of the fact that everybody has the same rights, right? Oh, can you see my screen? I think I'm having some issues here.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, I got it back. Yeah, it probably was the internet. Okay, so yes, equality. And when I say equality, I refer to, the fact that most Americans, right, state that people are created equal. Well, at least in theory. In practice, we know things are different, but I would say that for them, every American was created equal, right? And we can even see that in the Declaration of Independence, as we know. So informality is another aspect that characterizes them, right? We all know how informal Americans are, not only in the way they speak, but also in the way they dress, right? We have had some professors, for example, who come from the United States, and we have seen how informal they wear. The clothes they wear are very casual, right? They really concern about comfort more than impressing other people with the way they dress up. All right. And then similarly, their perception of future change and progress, right? We all know that most Americans are not so concerned about history and traditions. Like instead, they prefer to focus more on the future, right? And they try to look ahead all the time, knowing that the future is within their control, right? And then also we can say that directness and assertiveness is another aspect that really stands up here, right? They are famous for being very frank, very open, but also very explicit when they tell you what they think of you and what they want from you as well. And now don't get me wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be, let's say, a conflictive encounter, right? Because it's all the opposite. Like when there are conflicts or when there are disagreements, Americans usually try to settle those differences by direct discussion, right? But not with the purpose of creating conflict, but they will do this in a more constructive way, in a more constructive fashion. And what to say about time? They're very respectful of time, right? Time is money, they will say. And they're very well organized, or at least they try to be. And they really, show respect for those people who usually organize their schedules very well as well, right? So now these are just some of the elements that we might think about when it comes to American culture. Of course, there are many more, right? But it just helps us to understand, right, better what is life like in the United States and what are the expectations that they might have of us as users of the language. Now, regarding the use of the language, there's something really important here that is called intercultural communication competence, which is the ability to communicate effectively and appropriately in various cultural contexts, right? So probably you're now wondering like, okay, like what does it have to do with me? Well, in order to achieve this, right? In order to achieve this, there are certain components that we need to be aware of. For example, we gotta have motivation, first of all. It means I have to have a reason to learn about this culture. This motivation can be in two ways. Like it can be intrinsic motivation, which is like your genuine or authentic desire to learn about this culture, right? Let's call it you have some connection with their music, their food, or you simply want to have an American boyfriend, for example, or a girlfriend, right? And that is what inspires you to know about them, right? And then there's another kind of motivation, which is extrinsic, the one that comes from outside sources. For example, in the case of us, knowing that if we're going to speak the language, it's to some extent a responsibility for us to be aware of the social conventions that we have, right? And of course, become aware of, what is correct, what is appropriate, and what is not correct or appropriate in those regions, all right? Then it also implies knowledge. And when I say knowledge, it comes in two ways. Like self-knowledge, I should be able to know myself as a Panamanian, know my culture, what are the strengths that we have, right, as Panamanians, and what are the aspects of our culture that probably will not align with theirs, right? That's something we have to be aware of. And then regarding this, of course, we should also have some mindfulness. That's sort of a trendy word right now. So what is mindfulness? It refers to some sort of a state of self, I would say, right? So it means that when you're having these interactions with native speakers, for example, you should be able to evaluate yourself during this process. Probably you could ask questions to yourself like, how is our communication going? Or what are my reactions toward this encounter? And what are the other person's reactions as well? All right. And then, of course, it also involves or it also relies on cognitive flexibility. By saying cognitive flexibility, I mean the fact that even though we may have some existing knowledge about this culture, right, we should always be open to changes. Like we can have the theory, but when we get into the practice, we realize that that knowledge that we had about this culture is not necessarily like that. It's not 100% like that. There will be exceptions, right? So we need to be able to change this knowledge and to relearn things regarding culture. And then finally, we should also have some tolerance for uncertainty and know that eventually, right, eventually, you might be immersed in a communicative encounter in which you will not be able to understand some cultural aspects of the language, right? And then when something like this occurs, what is recommendable? Well, first, you need to show yourself patient, right? Just show or keep some patience and, wait for the information to show around you in this encounter. But if this information doesn't show up, then you should feel free to ask for clarification, right? And then in this way, you will know what's going on in this encounter and you will be able to communicate appropriately, right, with these people. So in a summary, let's put it in a summary. In short, what should we be able to do, right? Firstly, if we are competent, linguistically and culturally competent, we should be able to notice, to recognize that there is a difference, right? Then we should be able to accept these differences, knowing that just because I have been doing something, right, in a specific manner throughout my whole life, it doesn't necessarily mean that the other persons, right, the other people have to do exactly the same. There are differences and we have to accept them. And most importantly, number 3, we need to learn to appreciate and value those differences. Learn from these differences, because in this way, we can even broaden our knowledge, right? Our general knowledge and become better citizens, I guess. So now regarding teaching, why do we need to teach culture in our classroom, right? It is a fact that culture shapes, right? Culture shapes our view of the world. So the more I know about culture, the more proficient I will be to interact appropriately with those speakers of the English language, right? That is the main reason why I should do it. And also because it doesn't make any sense to anyone to learn a language, right, if you don't know anything about the culture that is, directly connected to this language, or anything about the country in which this language is spoken, because that will make your communicative ability limited, without a doubt, right? Now, understanding and respecting other peoples as well, that's also important. As I said before, it's not just a matter of pointing out what differences exist, but accepting, embracing these differences and learning to deal with them. Now, what culture should we teach exactly in our classrooms, right? When it comes to culture, we can classify this into 2 categories, right? The big C culture and the little c culture. So the big C involves writers, everything that is related to the writers of that specific region, the art, the literature, musicians, etc. So that's the kind of culture that sometimes our programs, right, integrate or involve in the university, right? But there's another type of content that we can teach in class. That is the little c culture, the one that refers to daily life situations, the way in which they, react to daily life issues, popular culture, and social conventions as well. What is correct, what is not correct in that specific country, all right? Now, similarly, right, there are some things that you guys, students, can do regarding these topics. Firstly, I would always recommend you never to settle down, right? Never settle down only to what your professors teach you in class. I think it is our responsibilities as learners of the English language to always look for information that complements this knowledge, right? So what are some possible ways to do it? Well, probably you could find information on documentaries, right? Now we have Netflix, for example. There are tons of documentaries regarding culture, right? From which we can learn a lot. And similarly, a lot of YouTube channels that offer a lot of information regarding this. You can also watch movies regarding the culture of that country. You can even listen to podcasts, right? To podcasts regarding culture. And of course, do your own research. Like if you find yourself immersed in a situation that you don't understand, then Google it, right? We have tons of information that can help you to clarify your doubt and can help you to, be more appropriate when interacting with native speakers of the language. And then, of course, try new cuisine, try new foods, find out about what they usually eat, right? For those special events in a day, for example, like today, right? In a day like today. By the way, guys, happy Thanksgiving Day to everyone, right? So let's see, what do they eat for these specific events? What is the food they eat? What is the history behind this food, all right? Those are things that we can find out in order to have, valid opinions whenever we're going to interact with people from a specific country. Now, let me give you some tips for professors, right? What can we do? Whenever you're going to develop a class regarding culture, right? It is important to expose our students to authentic materials. And when I say authentic, it is the kind of material that is intended to be consumed by native speakers, not the material that we usually have in the textbooks that is being adapted, right, to language learner. So in this way, we can have a more realistic approach, right, a more realistic perspective of what this actually is. And then you can also invite or encourage our students to compare Panamanian culture with their culture. Like, what are the differences we can find, right? How do we deal with, civil aspects of society, right? In terms of our beliefs, right, and thoughts. And then you could also introduce your students to live native speakers. This is always a good choice, because in this way, right, students will have the opportunity to, directly keep an interaction or a conversation with these people, and then clarify their doubts, and also be able to, compare both cultures. Now, this is something important because sometimes we spend a lot of time watching videos and documentaries and just getting the theory, but at the end, theory means nothing if we don't get this into the practice. All right. So that is always a must in our classes. And then, of course, include some activities regarding food and the use of digital sources that can help us to complement our lessons as well. Right. And if you decide to use videos, right, then remember, using a video implies a process that we must follow. Like, don't simply play the video for the students to see it directly, but prepare the student first with previewing activities. And then during the observation of the video, you can also ask them to complete specific tasks. And then at the end of the session, probably you can have the follow-up activities that are usually, addressed to class discussion. All right. So what have we discussed today? Right? What have we discussed today? We have seen what culture involves. We have seen the aspects that define American culture, or at least some of them, right? We have seen intercultural communication competence, what it is and what it implies. And we have seen some recommendations for both students and professors when it comes to teach about culture, right? When it comes to about teaching or learning culture. So just remember, guys, the beauty of the world lies in the diversity of its peoples. To understand that we are valuable, right? Because of our, identity. Feel proud of what you are, but also embrace changes and try to understand things from the perspective of other cultures as well. All right. Thank you very much for your attention.
There is a question here. Yes, it's Maripaz has a question for you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, good morning, Professor. I have a question for you. That is, how does culture impact us as a learners of English?
All right. Thank you so much for this question. Well, we need to understand
How
that
does culture impact us as a learners of English?
Yes, very good question. Thank you. So we need to understand that in order to be proficient, right, a proficient speaker of the language, right, in this case, the English language, it is not just about having a good commands of the language, like having a good pronunciation or having a good commands of grammar. It is way more than that, right? Because if you do have good commands of the language, but you are not familiar with the conventions of that culture, then at the end, your communication will not be so effective because you keep the risk of not being appropriate. All right? So just because you have good pronunciation and grammar knowledge, it doesn't guarantee that you will be a good communicator. So that's why we should always be aware of what are those social conventions, what is correct, what is not correct in that specific culture, so that we can communicate appropriately and effectively when using the English language, right?
Thank you, Professor.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay, just tell you that Professor Eva Ramos cannot be on time with us because situation that she has faced this moment. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iris Sanchez-Serrano. Thank you very much, Dr. Jose Loaiza. Thank you very much, Magister Alvin Sandoval. Thank you very much, Magister Marcel Delgado. And thank you very much to all of you who have been present in this academic event.
Yes, thank you, Isabel, Rixie, for being with us here. Thanks to all of you, professor students, Professor De Leon, who have been here with us, coordinator of the department. Just to invite you to be here in the afternoon. It's 2 p.m. We have another session of conferences, okay? And then we have some speakers. This is face-to-face speakers. They are going to be here. Thanks, all the panelists. Thanks for your time, for your support to this activity. We have your certificates, and then we're going to be sending to you. Thanks a lot.